Hi, name is Noel Gibb. I'm doing some freelance stuff around autism. Visited countries in Latin America, Caribbean, and worked in Italy for a couple of years. It's more your cultural observations. Working with the Italians, who I love, maybe apart from Mr. Berlusconi, they have... the differences between some countries have like a medical model of autism and others a more sort of social model. The Italians have this notion that either this is God's will, and they sort of seem to be wanting to find a cure, that they would like a pill and autism would somehow go away, whereas most countries, and I presume it's the journey, it's about services. I was quite interested in your cultural observations. Did you find some countries who felt, actually, we want to solve this notion of autism, as opposed to the journey that we're talking about is, it's just part of what humans are, and we should celebrate it, rather than thinking that it's somehow a stigma?
Well, I certainly think that the Korean community in New York, as well as in South Korea, is interested in services only if it affects a cure. That's one of the major barriers to service. Why do something if it's going to give a little incremental assistance? We only want to do something if it's going to cure. I think also that the bifurcation of autism among some communities, particularly in the United States, as a psychiatric versus a medical disorder, and I think that's a false dichotomy, but this is something that certainly has a lot of traction in the U.S., is generated in large part by this notion that if something's a medical disorder, we can cure it, whereas things that are psychiatric are not curable. And so I definitely think that that's the case. And I don't know very well the Italian conceptions of autism etiology, but in education, the Italians have long had been leaders in inclusion and in mainstreaming education, which I know has had some positive results. Well, okay.
Just down here.
My name is Sheila Barton. I have a son of 28 with autism. He lives in a house with 9 other people run by NAS Cymru, and I've also written a book about him. Your lecture was, and your book, is quite upbeat in lots of ways, and is basically, I think, telling us a story that the more and more visible we get, the better things will be. But even in your book, there are some really sad stories. And in Mike's book, there are some terribly sad stories, and we see them in the press all the time. And it's clear that there are still doctors and pretend doctors, and therapists and pretend therapists, and sadly also parents who are willing to subject their autistic children to basically what comes down to torture. And I feel that you'd only be able to do that if you kind of regarded people with autism as somehow less than human. So my question is about what more we can do. I mean, we can be visible, we can be out there, but there are other things that we've got to push at here. And I'm wondering if you've got any ideas of, where we should be going at that to make people understand that people with autism are fully human and have human rights, even if they can't express them.
It's an excellent question that you ask, and you're right, there are many stories in my book that are upsetting, and even stories about my own daughter. I mean, we have dealt with a lot, and there's a section in the book about her being assaulted by the principal of the school, that she was in. So no, you don't want to paint a picture that's so rosy that it's unrealistic. But my major interest is stigma, which I see as the major barrier to care. And although autism and other psychiatric conditions are much less stigmatized than ever before, the major problem with stigma is that children remain hidden. And a lot of the terrible things that we see, a lot of the terrible things that parents have done to their children that have been discovered are behind closed doors. They're in houses in Nairobi or in Lima, Peru, or even in major cities in the United States, where people are so frightened, so upset, that they keep their children hidden away, and they think about them terribly. I mean, I occasionally get threatened with violence from people who are not happy with what I say. Doesn't happen very often, and there are a lot of autism researchers who get a lot more than I do. But one that I got recently was from someone who called my office from Texas and said, "You think autism is okay? Listen to my son." And then put his son on the telephone, who's nonverbal, but I could hear sounds. And it was very upsetting to me. I don't normally get very upset when it's just a parent, but this was somebody who was involving his child. And I'm thinking, what is going on in this family that this man sees his son in such a negative light? And he said, "My son is an animal. My son is a savage." It's terrible, right? But this is the kind of thing that I suspect is happening more in private with people who are not involving a team. They don't have... I think that a lot of people who are mistreating their children don't have a group, a team to help support their family. They're not getting respite care. They're not getting assistance from other family members. They may not have the social supports. And so really, in terms of stigma and treatment, I'm very much interested in this sort of the hiding, the secretiveness.
We're running way over time, but this lady here has had a hand up for a long time. Yeah, I'm afraid we're going to have to wind it up on that question.
Hiya. I was just recently reading an article about a professor in America who had studied B.F. Skinner, his theorist on behaviour, and it was saying how in America they were putting electric shocks on children. Obviously, I don't agree with that, and I would say that they're not really addressing the child's needs, that they're just blocking it. I just wanted to kind of know your views on it.
Yeah, I don't know very much about that. There is a history within ABA. There's a history of of Lovas doing this, and there is a school, Judge someone school in New York. Sorry?
Rotenberg.
Yeah, just Judge Reitenberg, where they continue to do this, and it sounds horrible. And I just don't know of anybody personally that approves of this.